The cell is the basic structural, functional, and biological unit of all known living organisms. Each cell has a specific job to do. The cells that do the same job combine together to form body tissue such as muscle, skin, or bone. Group of different types of cells make up the organs in your body, such as nails, hair, liver, or lungs. To understand, think of cells as microscopic factories. The factories typically contain people, machines, and raw materials. Supplies are brought in to the factory where workers use the supplies to build whatever product the factory makes. Machines in the factory play different roles in that process. Everything works together to create product that the customer needs. Similarly, the cell has several parts that helps in bringing raw materials, that is amino acid, to build proteins via a process called protein synthesis. Ribosome unit within the cell factory is responsible for complex protein synthesis. Different cells have different jobs to do, and they need different proteins to perform specific assigned tasks. For example, the common known cell in our blood are red blood cells. The red blood cells plays a critical function of carrying oxygen. For red blood cell to function, it needs an essential protein called hemoglobin. This protein carries oxygen away from the lungs and carbon dioxide back to the lungs. Another interesting protein is fibrin in the human body. Fibrin, a protein that is produced in response to bleeding during an injury and is a major component of the blood clot. Fibrin is a tough protein substance that combines to form long fibrin thread mesh that entangles platelets, building up a spongy mass that gradually hardens and contracts to form the blood clot. Without this protein, we will end up losing a lot of blood even for a small injury. Even more fascinating is that there are certain proteins that can walk and are responsible for transfer of proteins and other signaling messages between the cells, literally like a cargo unit of the factory. These proteins are called motor proteins. They literally convert chemical energy to mechanical energy and walk on the structure called microtubes.
These are molecular motors involved with a directed transport along the mitotic spindle. The orange proteins walking to the left are kinesins, molecular motors carrying proteins on their back. Striding from the kinetochore on long molecular legs are dynein, carrying the stop signal broadcasting system.
How exciting, right? These cells are small molecular robots that perform a various functions using different proteins within our body to help us survive. Hope you understand the critical role of amino acids and how it helps to build different protein molecules necessary for various cells to function. Let's make it more interesting now. Most proteins that we consume or we find in inorganic components are usually non-functional. That is, a molecular cell cannot function with such a simple, linear structure of protein molecules. Unless protein takes a specific three-dimensional structure by coiling and folding, they cannot perform a biological function which is necessary for a living cell to exist. The DNA in the cell plays a critical role in storing and instructing cells on how to generate specific proteins in the right sequence with the right folding structure. The DNA protein by design cannot move across the cell. Remember, the cell is a factory with various working units. Some of the instruction about the protein synthesis needs to move from DNA to a unit called ribosome where the protein synthesis happens. There comes another transport unit in the factory called mRNA, also called messenger RNA. This mRNA protein copies the instruction from DNA to ribosome unit, like a photocopy machine. This mRNA provides instruction to ribosome, and ribosome then uses another protein called tRNA, also called transport RNA, to bring necessary amino acids together in the right sequence to build protein. This process is called replication. Every day in your body, around 50 to 70 billion cells die due to various reasons such as cell damage and aging. So cell replication is a vital process to create new cells in your body. What you're about to see is an extraordinary animation created by Walter and Elisa Hollister about the DNA and replication process.
Using computer animation based on molecular research, we are now able to see how DNA is actually copied in living cells. You are looking at an assembly line of amazing miniature biochemical machines that are pulling apart the DNA double helix and cranking out a copy of each strand. The DNA to be copied enters the production line from bottom left. The whirling blue molecular machine is called helicase. It spins the DNA as fast as a jet engine as it unwinds the double helix into two strands. One strand is copied continuously and can be seen spooling off to the right. Things are not so simple for the other strand because it must be copied backwards. It is drawn out repeatedly in loops and copied one section at a time. The end result is two new DNA molecules. In this animation, we'll see the remarkable way our DNA is tightly packed up so that 6 feet of this long molecule fits into the microscopic nucleus of every cell. The process starts when DNA is wrapped around special protein molecules called histones. The combined loop of DNA and protein is called a nucleosome. Next, the nucleosomes are packaged into a thread. The end result is a fiber known as chromatin. This fiber is then looped and coiled yet again. Leading finally to the familiar shapes known as chromosomes, which can be seen in the nucleus of dividing cells. Chromosomes are not always present. They form around the time cells divide when the two copies of the cell's DNA need to be separated.